and Voices of the Week. The defense establishment today successfully completed a missile test with its Arrow 3 ballistic missile interceptor, which is designed to shoot down intercontinental ballistic missiles outside the atmosphere. The ministry said the advanced system identified its target, calculated and successfully intercepted it, and hailed the experiment as a major milestone for Israel's missile defense system. The test was conducted at an experimental launch site in the center of the country in conjunction with Israel's aerospace industry and the Israel Air Force. The Arrow 3 is designed to intercept missiles with nuclear, biological, or chemical warheads in extremely high altitudes before they even re-enter the atmosphere. Israel has a new Mossad Chief. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu named Yossi Cohen as the head of the Mossad intelligence service, replacing outgoing Chief Tamir Pardo, who is slated to step down in January. Cohen, who currently serves as Netanyahu's top national security advisor, is considered a very close to the Prime Minister. The 54-year-old security expert joined the famed spy agency in 1983, where he held several operational positions until rising to become deputy head of the organization in 2011. A position he held for 2 years before being appointed head of the National Security Council. As he made the announcement earlier this week, Netanyahu hailed Cohen's vast achievements and experience in various security-related fields while commending his leadership and professional skills. By law, the head of the Mossad is the only incumbent operative in the organization whose name is allowed to be made public. Speaking briefly to reporters, Cohen vowed to do his best to bring good operations and intelligence to Israel. Auda Tarabin, a Bedouin Israeli citizen who has been jailed in Egypt on charges of spying for Israel, was today released from prison. Tarabin, who has repeatedly denied all allegations against him, was returned to his home village in Rahat after completing his sentence. Egyptian media reported that Tarabin was released as part of a prisoner exchange, but the Prime Minister's office has denied this, insisting that Tarabin's release was the result of efforts made by his lawyers and the Foreign Ministry. Israel did, however, return 2 Egyptians serving time in Israeli jails that had completed their sentences. Meanwhile, the recent wave of terror continued well into this week. Initial reports that at least 3 people were injured a short time ago in a suspected vehicular attack near Beit Aryeh in Samaria. And last night, Palestinian assailants riddled an Israeli car with automatic gunfire near the West Bank settlement of Avnei Chefetz, wounding the Israeli driver and his wife. The gunman managed to flee towards Tulkarem, where soldiers have launched a manhunt for them. The wounded man was identified as Shaul Nir, who was in the past a convicted member of a Jewish terrorist group that carried out lethal attacks against Palestinians in the 1980s. On Sunday, 2 Israelis were lightly injured in a combined stabbing and vehicular attack in Jerusalem. A Palestinian terrorist first attempted to ram his car into a crowd of people who were standing along Yirmiyahu Street in the city's Romema neighborhood. The assailant then exited his car and began stabbing one of the bystanders. He was shot and killed by a soldier who happened to be on the scene. On Monday, a Palestinian attacker stabbed and critically wounded an Israeli in the West Bank city of Hebron. The attacker was shot dead by security forces. And also Wednesday, there was another stabbing attack in Hebron. 2 more Israelis sustained moderate to critical wounds after they were attacked by a knife-wielding Palestinian at the entrance to the Beit Hadassah building in the city's area. The terrorist was shot and killed by soldiers. It has been revealed that security forces have arrested 5 Israeli Arabs who plotted to join the Islamic State. All the cell members are related and come from the same Suleiman family in Nazareth. They were arrested last month in a joint operation of the Shin Bet and police. The 5, aged between 18 and 27, allegedly held secret meetings and trained to use weapons. Over the past year, they became more religious and expressed support for the Islamic State. Last month, 6 Israelis from Jaljulia were arrested for also planning to join the illegal terror organization. Returning now to the growing threat of ISIS, U.S. President Barack Obama this week vowed to hunt down Islamic State and any terror groups planning to attack the United States. He outlined his government's plan to keep Americans and the international community safe.
The threat from terrorism is real, but we will overcome it. We will destroy ISIL and any other organization that tries to harm us. First, our military will continue to hunt down terrorist plotters in any country where it is necessary. In Iraq and Syria, airstrikes are taking out ISIL leaders, heavy weapons, oil tankers, infrastructure. And since the attacks in Paris, our closest allies, including France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, have ramped up their contributions to our military campaign, which will help us accelerate our effort to destroy ISIL. It is.
Joining us now from our Tel Aviv studio is security and intelligence affairs expert Yossi Melman. Thanks for joining us, Yossi.
Hello.
Yossi, let's begin with today's successful missile test. What's the significance of the test that was conducted today?
I didn't hear your question. Can you repeat it?
Sure, Yossi,
there is a miscommunication here with Tel Aviv.
Yossi, we're asking you about the Arrow 3 missile test today. What do you think the significance of this test is?
Well, the significance is that this is the first test which succeeded. A similar test was conducted last year, exactly in December 2014, and it failed. It's the first time that there is an interception, a kill outside the atmosphere, and it's one more element in the efforts of the Israeli military, the IDF and the Ministry of Defense to improve Israel defense systems from rockets and missiles. It's one layer of several layers which Israel either already developed or is developing. And also it's very important that this is a joint venture with the United States and supported by the Pentagon and partially financed by it.
Yossi, why does the Arrow 3 have to intercept something out of the atmosphere? What's the advantage of hitting out of the atmosphere?
Well, it is aimed basically to provide Israel with defense against Iranian long-distance Shihab missiles, which are ballistic missiles. And the idea is to intercept them as close to the launching pads as possible. In other words, if a Shihab missile is launched against Israel from somewhere in Iran, the Arrow 3 is supposed to meet it and intercept it and to kill its warhead above Iraq or Jordan.
Sort of sending it back to the sender. Okay, Yossi, let's move on to the next topic, and that is the newly appointed head of the Mossad. Was Yossi Cohen the right choice?
Yes, it was absolutely the right choice. The two other candidates were also very suitable candidates. All of them came from the Mossad, served decades in the Mossad, nearly 30 years. Yossi has been there for 30 years. And the Prime Minister had to make a decision. And I think Yossi had a better starting point than the two others, although all of them have been very qualified for the job. And this is because in the last 2.5 years he was very close to the Prime Minister, serving him as the head of the Israel's National Security Council and a National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister, and that broadened Yossi Cohen's horizons regarding strategic and diplomatic issues.
Well, even the Prime Minister referred to him as the second foreign minister. Well, how does that come about?
Well, it's a traditional role of the Mossad. There is nothing new about it. One of the tasks of the Mossad is to serve as a clandestine channel for secret meetings and exchange of information between its counterparts, and especially with countries which don't want to do it in the open, Muslim countries, Arab countries. And in the past it was reported that the heads of Mossad met with senior officials, including in Saudi Arabia, including its intelligence community chiefs, with Egyptians, Jordanians, United Arab Emirates, Moroccan officials. So that's a traditional role of the Mossad. And the head of Mossad is usually taking it under its wing. And I assume Cohen would continue to do it. But the important this time is because Netanyahu is really hoping that through these secret channels he would bring about some sort of a regional coalition, regional arrangement between Israel and anti-Iranian countries in the Middle East.
Yossi, what do you think the main challenges are facing the new head of the Mossad?
To face the new reality of the Middle East, to be adapt to the new reality. When Yossi Cohen left Mossad nearly 3 years ago, the Middle East was different, and now the 4 countries have collapsed: Syria, Iraq, Libya, and Yemen. There are new terrorist organizations mushrooming in the region, Daesh above all, but also Sinai province, which pledged allegiance to ISIS, to the Islamic State, to Daesh. You have the Nusra Front. Syria is in a civil war. And the question is how the Mossad and the entire Israeli intelligence community, the military intelligence also, are facing this reality. Are they preparing themselves to provide the best intelligence and the best analysis about these developments? And also, I would say it's a huge challenge to penetrate terrorist groups like ISIS.
Yossi, you mentioned Daesh, Islamic State. A senior defense official this week said that it's just a matter of time before the ISIS attacks Israel. Is this something that we should be concerned about?
Well, I don't know what the future will bring about. I'm not a prophet, but if you look at the facts on the ground, you see that ISIS is already in Sinai. There are some small gatherings of ISIS near the Israeli border in Syria, although most of the border is controlled by Al-Qaeda. And what's the difference between Al-Qaeda and ISIS? There is no big difference. At the moment, Israel is not highly on their agenda, to the contrary. But yes, maybe one day they'll turn their focus on Israel. I don't think at the moment we should be concerned. If there is any concern regarding ISIS in Israel, this is the domestic question that more and more young Israeli Arabs either wish to join ISIS or trying to join ISIS, or are imitating ISIS tactics or following their doctrines.
Yossi Melman, thanks so much for your insight. Thanks for joining IBA News.
Thank you.
President Rivlin is currently in the U.S. for a brief diplomatic visit, and last night Rivlin met with U.S. President Obama. The two spoke about burning security issues as well as the absence of peace talks with the Palestinians. Obama stressed that while peace between the two sides seems distant at this time, his administration remains committed to achieving a sustainable solution. Despite the gloomy picture, Rivlin thanked his American counterpart for his continued support and highlighted the timeless bond between the two countries. Prior to the meeting, Obama expressed condemnation of Palestinian violence and called on PA President Mahmoud Abbas to do the same.
I've been very clear in condemning the violence that is recurring inside of Israel, the need for leaders like President Abbas to unequivocally condemn the violence that's been taking place, the need to end incitement, but also the need for Israelis and Palestinians to find mechanisms in which to dialogue and arrive at peace.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry sparked much anger among politicians here at home when he said this week that current trends in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict are leading to a one-state reality. In a speech harshly critical of Israel at the Brookings Institute Saban's Forum, Kerry warned that Israel will not be able to maintain a democracy while keeping its Jewish majority if it does not separate from the Palestinians. He also added that settlement building raises questions about Israel's intentions.
The Prime Minister has been clear that he does not want a binational state and that he remains committed to the vision of two states for two peoples. But at the same time, many current Israeli ministers have been equally clear that they oppose a Palestinian state, not just now, but ever. We have to be honest about what a one-state solution actually looks like. As a Jewish and democratic state, when from the river to the sea, there would not even be a Jewish majority.
Prime Minister Netanyahu reacted angrily to Kerry's remarks. Speaking at the start of his weekly cabinet meeting on Sunday, Netanyahu said Israel will not be a binational state and blamed the Palestinians for the failure of the peace efforts. He also dismissed suggestions that settlement building was the main issue preventing a sustainable peace agreement. Speaking in a televised address to the Saban Forum, Netanyahu reiterated his stance that the Palestinian refusal to recognize Israel as a Jewish state is the root of the conflict and the main reason which has derailed peace from being achieved.
It's because the Palestinians have not yet been willing to cross that conceptual bridge, that emotional bridge of giving up the dream, not of a state next to Israel, but a state instead of Israel. That ultimately the only workable solution is not a unitary state, but a demilitarized Palestinian state that recognizes the Jewish state. That's the solution. But the Palestinians have to recognize the Jewish state, and they persistently refuse to do so. They refuse to recognize a nation state for the Jewish people in any boundary. That was and remains the core of the conflict.
In other news, Israeli authorities have seized a large shipment of some 4,000 plush rock-throwing dolls that were bound for the Palestinian Authority. Custom officials at the Haifa port discovered the container that arrived from the United Emirates during a routine check. Each of the toys had its face hidden by a keffiyeh, with one arm raised, clutching a tiny rock. The dolls hold banners saying, "Jerusalem is ours," and "Jerusalem we are coming." Deputy Foreign Minister Tzipi Hotovely charged the shipment constituted further incitement. She issued a statement saying that the toys are on their way to the PA with one clear intention, and that is to poison the minds of young, innocent children. Renowned Jewish French philosopher and author Bernard Henri Levy just wrapped up a visit to Israel to promote his new book, The Genius of Judaism. Levy spoke to Israel Television's Yaakov Achimeir about the growing threat of the Islamic State, drawing a direct link between terror attacks plaguing Israel and the rest of the world.
What happens in Tel Aviv, what happened in Paris is exactly the same. It is the same ideology. It is, at the end of the day, the same methodology. It is the same ISIS spirit, if we can call that a spirit. It is the same. We face the same danger. The stabbings in the streets of Tel Aviv or in the territories, the stabbing, they are so clearly influenced by the videos of Daesh, of ISIS, which are put online and which have a sort of proliferating influence. So yes, this I'm convinced of that. It is the same battle which we are waging. Paris, Tel Aviv, Bamako this morning, New York 14 years ago. It is the same battle, and it is time for the world to understand it.
Republican U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump is continuing to make controversial statements and is now dragging Israel into the whole fray. This week, Trump called for a ban on all Muslims from entering the United States. Here's what he had to say.
Calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. We've got to maybe do something with the internet because they are recruiting by the thousands. They're leaving our country. If you're talking about making America great, we have to be strong. We have to be vigilant. And if we're not, we take them back. Oh, come on back. Where were you? I was fighting for ISIS. Oh, come on back. Go home. Enjoy yourself.
Trump was scheduled to visit Israel later this month, but a short time ago he announced on his Twitter account that he was postponing his trip. He said he would meet Netanyahu at a later date after I become president of the United States. Dozens of Knesset members have blasted Trump for making racist statements and have urged the prime minister to cancel his meeting with the outspoken candidate that had been set for December 28th. Netanyahu's office last night issued a statement rejecting Trump's comments on Muslims, saying Israel respects all religions and strictly guarantees the rights of all its citizens. Hundreds of dignitaries, politicians, families, and friends gathered this week to bid farewell to the iconic left-wing leader Yossi Sarid, who passed away at the age of 75 from heart-related problems. Sarid, a former chairman of the Meretz Party, education minister, and minister of environmental protection, was laid to rest at Kibbutz Givat HaShlosha on Sunday. For decades, Sarid served within the Labor Party, which is now part of the Zionist Union. In the mid-1980s, he broke away from the labor following mounting political policy differences over the treatment of Palestinians and his outspoken support for Palestinian statehood. He was a member of 3 cabinets, 9 Knessets, and chaired the Meretz Party for 7 years, when he was also the head of the opposition for 2 years. In 2003, he resigned from leadership of the Meretz Party, and in 2005, he announced he was leaving politics. Sarid was a renowned author and journalist. In recent years, he wrote a weekly column for Haaretz newspaper and participated in hosting a popular current events program on Army radio. He was known to be very outspoken and opinionated. Friends and rivals alike remember Sarid as a rare figure for Israel, and although many often disagreed with him, he was often described as a genuine sense of integrity. And now to something different. There have been hundreds, if not thousands, of birthright trips to the country, but now there's a new initiative focusing on young couples, many of them mixed marriages, who are being brought to Israel to help them foster closer ties to Judaism. It's called Honeymoon Israel. I joined one of them, and here's my report. Strolling along the ruins around the Temple Mount, the guide gives them an inside story into the mind of King Herod.
The guy was a fruitcake. The guy was crazy. He grew up, by the way, in the palace of Julius Caesar.
A couple of years ago, I looked around at the Jewish community and I said, we have so much intermarriage happening, and we have almost no resources being spent on young couples. A lot of money gets spent on high school students and college students. A lot of money is spent on families already with kids, but in this specific time when people are just getting married, almost no resources are spent. And this is such a sensitive time in people's lives. They're asking themselves, what kind of home do we want to create? What kind of family are we going to be? And my partner, Mike Wise, and I, we said, let's invest our time and let's try to raise money around investing in couples.
Honeymoon Israel is a private, non-profit organization inspired by Birthright with the goal of helping young couples, many of whom are intermarried, explore how they want to create Jewish families.
I'm having a tremendous experience here. To have this opportunity with Honeymoon Israel and get such an intimate portrait, to meet so many of the people, to have this incredible guide who puts everything in context for us, and to have all these different peers to talk about their own relationship.
This group from the San Francisco area was made up of 20 couples, some with children, some expecting.
We're newlyweds, we're expecting a child, and to help us kind of form our Jewish identity as a couple, and like how we're going to raise our child as a Jewish child.
In Judaism, yes, but our child will, by default, be intercultural, interracial. It's going to be a very, of a complex identity.
The missions come from one city so that they're able to create a network of support for this issue when they return.
A big piece of our trip is about creating community, meeting other couples. Another big piece of our trip is feeling welcome for the first time in their lives, many of them, as part of the Jewish people. They've been judged, they've felt on the outside, and when they come here, when they hear our message, when they get to experience Israel together, they feel like they're on a level playing field.
One of the differences with Birthright is that each couple pays $1,800 to participate. It's a heavily subsidized trip, and they travel in class, stay in nice hotels, eat in fancy restaurants, and have a more mature experience than the students of Birthright. Now, this is not a conversion trip. We're not out here to convert them.
No, absolutely not. On the contrary, we want to strengthen anybody in their own place by all means. This is a trip which is designed around the understanding of the unique situation with the American Jewish community, unique in Jewish history, I mean, which challenges us to rethink how do we approach as a Jewish society, as the Israeli society, our relations with Jews who married non-Jews.
They hope to bring 50 trips a year to Israel in the coming years.
Most of our couples come home with a renewed sense of what it means to be part of the Jewish family. They come home, they start celebrating Shabbat in some way, they start celebrating Jewish holidays. They certainly get together with other couples from the trip for around Jewish holidays, and we've seen that in cities throughout the United States.
Research shows that some 70% of non-Orthodox Jews were intermarrying in America.
I grew up Christian and Buddhist, and so we celebrate Christmas, but I didn't even know Jews. And so to have context around her life and her culture and her people is something that was really important to me.
There's something really emotional to be in a place where,
you're allowed to be yourself. You're allowed to sort of...
Everybody's Jewish.
Yeah. But not all of the couples were mixed. Some were totally Jewish, and for some, it really is a honeymoon.
It's an opportunity for us to kind of reconnect with our Judaism, to meet other young couples in our community. You know, it's difficult sometimes to find people that you have sort of similar ideas and thoughts about life, the same age, and it's a way for us to bring sort of new traditions into our home because we're newlyweds. We just got married a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Following their meeting in the Oval Office, President Rivlin and President Obama took part in the traditional Hanukkah candle lighting ceremony at the White House. In light of the Hanukkah holiday, Rivlin called Obama a shamash, a leader of others like the candle on the Hanukkah menorah that lights the rest of the candles, as he related some of the festival's history and the tale of the oil miracle that burned for 8 days, comparing the number of Obama's 8-year-long political career as president.
Like to light this candle, this little flame, with a prayer and hope that one day religious, culture, and moral liberty will be enjoyed without question by each and every person in the world. Hanukkah Sameach. Happy Hanukkah. And to the Christian people all over the world, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Well, that brings us to the end of this week's special weekly edition of IBA. We encourage you to write us and let us know what you think. The email address is ibaletters@gmail.com. That's ibaletters@gmail.com. And what's become a new tradition of the Hanukkah holiday, the Jewish a cappella group, the Maccabeats, have released their latest musical clip for their song Latkir Recipe. Here's a taste. I'm Ariel O'Sullivan wishing you a good week. Happy Hanukkah, Chag Sameach, and Shalom from Jerusalem.
Potatoes peeling great, shredding onion tears streaming down your face. Then salt and pepper to your taste. Add a tablespoon of flour, a pinch of baking powder. Then add 2 eggs and mix it all together. And while we stir, we say, tonight is Hanukkah, got everything.